my God. Welcome to the Pablo Chapa podcast. There you go. So, cheers with coffee. Today was supposed to be Discovery Friday.
That's right, and we were normally going to record the podcast on Wednesday, but we've just been so busy doing so many deals that we've had to push it back.
Mm-hmm. And I just learned that a good friend of mine is doing 150 acres in Gwinnett. 150 acres. He's doing like 450 units, man. I want to cry. Oh my God.
I mean,
How could we miss 150 acres?
Is it one parcel?
Yes. Well, combination of parcels, but how could we...
I've been looking in Gwinnett. I've been looking in York County. That's where my mission is.
We'll get there, Pablo. We'll get there. We have a couple deals that are possibly going to be in the pipeline.
So first of all, why am I crying? Am I jealous? I'm not jealous. I'm happy for him.
Yeah.
You know?
Definitely jealous.
But I'm like, you feel like I was sleeping on the wheel. And it's not, in the end, we're always competing to find the next deal, and you're competing with the market. The fact that you know a guy that is part of the market, I was like, holy damn crap.
Well, I mean, that just means that those deals are out there.
Right. So this is very interesting because we had he's an investment banker. He manages, we had a guy who we can't name visit us yesterday. He manages a family office, which, for those of you who do not know, a wealthy family will pool resources to be invested in as a fund, as their own private fund, to the benefit of the family, the heirs, what have you. And he follows the stock market, and he declares himself, well, I don't know a lot about real estate. That's why I come to you. I learn a lot. And the tidbits that he hears from stock market sources is fire and flames, real estate, whatnot.
It's all over. There's no deals available. The market's too rough.
Right. And then the next day, I talk with another good pal, and he's saying, I'm closing 3 deals this week, all of them for over 100 units, and 150 acres, not units, in Gwinnett.
Yeah.
Which, by definition, in the current zoning, they can go to 450 freaking units. That's just units meaning doors. Doors meaning residential houses for. It's probably going to be townhomes, but it could at that size it could be single family.
Yeah.
The market is moving, and the reason why the market is moving, which should be the question, like what's going on. So for what I've been able to understand, because I saw the news that my friend from yesterday was looking at, and he's looking at commercial going down the drains. Well, of course, people are working from home, but people require homes. We keep popping babies, or babies were popped 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and they need a place to what? Don't pop babies. It is bad.
But there is a shortage of housing in America.
Correct, because the population is growing.
Yeah.
We keep letting people in from outside of the country. We keep growing people in-house. In the end, people require a place to live. And there's a shortage. There's a deficit. And if you follow the 10 top builders, they're all growing.
Yeah.
And they can't keep up with demand.
There's too much demand. Not enough houses.
Correct.
Question.
Go ahead. Yeah.
By looking, again, I'm a newbie. I'm a skeptic.
Of course.
Right. So because I know what the statistic you're looking at, because we looked that up. Those top 10. How do we know that those people are building because of a need and not just building to keep the projects going?
That is an amazing question. And truthfully, it is very difficult to know. Because, so first of all, let's understand the question, a very intelligent question that Bridget's asking, which is, just like, and we've all heard this, oh, that bank is too big to fail. That car company, too big to fail. Correct? So a car company, even if demand is low, they can't help themselves. They need to build cars just to keep people employed, because otherwise when the demand comes up, they won't have the labor to do them, the contracts in place,
the knowledge,
so they will lose that. The same way, big companies that do construction, they can't let people go. Right. And I saw this firsthand, because in 2009 you had a lot of construction people that were laid off, and when in 2014 hit, and you start having this euphoria again of real estate, you had people on site wanting to do this retention ponds just anywhere that would cost an extra $2 or $3 million. It's like, no, dude, do it where it's appropriate. And there, you had a lot of book knowledge, but no practical knowledge. So it is true, going back to the question, how do you know? It is difficult to know.
Right. So I'm just saying, when you look at, I'm not disagreeing with the statement. Population is booming.
Yes.
And you can tell, because the part that I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is true, it's because you can tell by looking at statistics of the 10 top biggest company. I'm like,
correct.
What are better statistics to look at? And even if you were to look at those statistics, what is that based on? How do you? So that's just.
That's great. Let's go straight to, like, we explained what the question is and why it is a good question. And the answer is, you can't look at units built. Mm-hmm. You have to look at units sold or units rented.
Okay.
And that is the difference. Better. That's the difference between I'm creating a lot of pizzas, mm-hmm. or I'm actually delivering the pizzas to a house. Correct.
Okay. That's a better. Okay. Yes. Wonderful.
And they're pre-sold. These guys, they don't have enough inventory. They are pre-selling before houses are even built.
Gotcha. I'm just gonna jump into questions.
Go ahead.
You said something earlier, and because I was at the zoning meeting, and I heard it
on a county around Atlanta.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Evan's been to those things so many times since he was like a baby. Like, he was going to this as a baby. Like, he couldn't talk. He was already going to these meetings.
Right.
I'm very new. This is only my second one going.
No problem.
Love it. The tea is piping hot. I love politics. I don't know if I want to be involved, but I like listening to the politics because I like understanding people. But
to a county meeting, zoning and planning, permit and variances and things like that. Sure. And so one of those meetings.
Yeah.
Continue.
There was miscommunication, which was really funny, because talking about semantics, they thought that something was going to be a retention pond, and in fact, it was clearly on the board that it was a detention pond. And so I actually don't know anything about those. I do know that there's a difference between D and re, and I was like, what does that mean? So I'm like, what's a detention pond? What is a retention pond?
So.
And could you possibly get those confused? Or are they
yes,
vastly
it's easy.
different?
It's easy to get them confused, and basically, in one, you are trying to prevent your land to be part of a flood zone, mm-hmm. and that's a little bit complicated to do because you require permits from the Corps of Engineers.
Is that a detention pond?
The detention pond. I don't know. One of them both. But I understand.
We went to. Sorry, I'm just gonna use you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
They thought it was a retention pond, meaning that there was going to be a water. They thought that there was going to be a water front, and that there would be beautiful. They could make beautiful vegetation, and the people who were be like, that is not what we have. We have a detention pond because we're near the flood zone.
Correct. So
assuming detention pond is where you would want.
It's a big hole in the ground.
So that
normally with grass, sometimes dirt, and then when it rains, water will go to that, create a temporary pool that is muddy. You can't use it as a pool. That will eventually drain through underground canals somewhere.
Okay.
The one they thought, because they see this little lake on the plan, we're gonna have a mini lake, and it's gonna be beautiful, and it's gonna have ducks and.
They actually, I'm pretty sure they said ducks at the meeting. Yes, but I remember the person in front of the microphone. They said, well, it's a detention pond, so most of the time it's going to be dry.
Empty.
Yes.
And I saw the council's faces fall because, then no ducks.
Right, and the reason. So first, again, it's easy to get them confused, but you don't call it retention pond. You call it a lake. You call it a pond.
A pond.
The re is never used.
It's redundant.
Ever used. Getting a permit for that requires. You won't get it in the city. It requires that you have a large agricultural acreage, and then you request the Corps. Hey, for my agriculture, the law says that I have these many acres. And because I'm going to use it to retain water so I could use it for my field, I am allowed by law to do this. And then once you have that little lake in place, which is expensive,
and it takes up land, because actually the council said, just curious, and they said it kind of even with that tone, just curious, is it possible to put, they were like, is it possible to put a retention pond in it? And it was like crickets, and the folks said, no, it wouldn't make sense because we need the density for this. They were only on such a big, they're not going out, they don't have acres and acres and acres of land. They have only so much to put, a certain thing in.
Right.
And they were like, it would take off, that the detention pond by itself took up I would say about a solid 15 to 20% of that. The detention pond was huge. To put a retention pond would have taken up more than half of.
Yeah, because now you're talking about creating a lake. But moreover, they probably are thinking about, I do know what a retention pond is. I do know what an artificial lake requires. And then the code would require me to leave this much. So, no.
The engineer said no.
And it takes a year of permits with.
Technically, the question that was asked by the council was, is it possible to do this? And he said, yes, but it wouldn't make sense for us to do so.
I would
have. It's possible.
I would have, the Corps of Engineers would not allow it. That would have been my straightforward answer.
Sure, and he was an engineer who was responding.
But
I think so.
So it is very difficult because you're in those meetings and you have, no offense, but somebody that might be a successful doctor, but knows nothing about building codes, knows nothing about construction or city development, and they're making decisions with their good natured heart, but have nothing to do with the reality of how either the law or how this works.
There is a lack of knowledge about engineering, at least, because if you mix up, I'm just sitting there, I'm like, you literally just mixed up retention and detention.
Mm-hmm.
If you do that automatically, I don't know anything. I'm like, I know that you don't know.
But it is easy to understand from context. What they meant was a permanent lake.
Yeah.
And again, so for everybody listening, all lakes in Georgia, Alabama, Carolinas are man-made. Specifically, there might be one somewhere in the Carolinas and I don't know about, but all of them, they're man-made. And this is something people don't know. And they are all connected. Did you know this?
I did not know they were all connected.
They are all freaking connected. All water structures in Georgia are connected to each other such that if you have runoff water, it will raise the level up to a point and then slowly trickle down to the next detention ponds around, such that you mitigate water in case of a 100-year flood. Now, this is aside from any type of flood map or 100-year floods or whatever, but all of these man-made lake-like structures are connected to each other. Yeah, and that's one of the requirements for the Corps of Engineer. You're going to put it here. What are we going to connect it to? How can you prevent to it? And then can the other one that it's going to go flow down river be able to hold X much water if you come into a 100-year event? Right. So that's some of the reasons on the engineering. And that's why in the city, it's practically impossible to create your own lake at this point.
I understand.
You can create a pool, but not a lake.
It's Discovery Friday. I think that falls.
There you go. Discovery Friday. Yeah, they're all connected. I had a problem once in a property that is owned by a very good friend of mine that I will say his name is Andy, and he speaks broken English, and he owns a lake here in Georgia, about an hour south of Atlanta. And then something happened. By lack of maintenance, the lake started draining. And they were like, oh my God, what do we do? We tried to put sandbags on and fix it, and we spent probably $20,000 on doing partial fixes. The true fix would have been $150,000. In the end, it had to work with what we did, and they just agreed that the level of the lake was going to be about 2 feet lower. But by having it 2 feet lower for over an extended period of time, it prevented him from later making the decision, now I'm going to fix it, and I'm going to take the lake to back it what it was, because the Corps would not allow it.
Wow.
So these are things that are expensive to be maintained. Back in the day, a good friend of mine who used to do subdivisions, and I'll just say his name is Jeff. And Jeff, if you're listening, love you dearly. He created a subdivision, and a few lots, he kept it out of the HOA because he can. And then those lots actually headed straight into, he created a lake. I mean, at that time, this subdivision was probably created over 20 years ago. And at that time, the Corps was more lenient. He got all the permits, created a lake, created this beautiful subdivision next to the lake. He kept the lots that were out of the HOA, good for him, and also the ones that had the best view of the lake. The lake was maintained by the HOA, and I remember, and I wouldn't even have known all about this just because I was helping him at that time. They had to do some maintenance, and he wanted me to go take a look. And then I realized, man, this guy really knew his engineering. I mean, he was so bright. And the subdivision looks beautifully, lake looks amazing, people paddle there. It's just beautiful, it's just gorgeous. But at the same time, he made sure that his father-in-law, who owned property there, didn't pay HOA, and yet had one of the best views out there. And I'm not sure if the HOA would be happy to know this. I'm not even sure that they know, but anyway, things that happen in real estate.
Yeah, he just got the best of both worlds.
Yes, and that's a very long segue on lakes in Georgia. But yes.
I love it. No, thank you. I have a variety of questions from the abstract to the technical. My next question, completely different things.
Just jumping.
That's what I do. What is an accredited? What is
Accredited.
an accredited investor versus a non-accredited investor?
Okay, great. So.
And
And
how much do they know about lakes?
nothing.
I know nothing about
Accredited investor means that you're not. So it's a technical term,
Okay.
and that is used by fund managers, investment bankers, and anybody that wants to put together a fund. It is a term that is defined by the SEC. And I can tell you the rules, but like you make X amount of money, you have X amount of assets. Basically, what it's trying to say is that if you lose your money on an investment, you do not lose your house or your life savings, or you're not and this is the term that literally this is how it's taught in school when you go to do your Series 7 or your 52, 63, that you're not just some grandmother investing the farm or the house. So you are an individual with understanding of risk. You have enough money that you're able to put money into this investment. If you lose it, you lose maybe a year or two of savings, but it's not life savings, and you not be destitute. That's what it means.
Okay. So
And there's a bunch of rules that define it, but that's what it means.
yeah,
Unaccredited investor would be, I finally made $50,000 and I'm going to invest $50,000. Now, with the advent of crowdfunding, this was very contended because crowdfunding requires you to, well, you can invest on very risky projects. And the way they got around it is, yeah, but people are only investing $1,000 or $5,000 or $10,000. $10,000 is not going to kill anybody.
Yeah.
And well, it might, but that's how they got around those sorts of regulations. Because when you do crowdfunding,
You're asking for such a small amount that it's not going to impact their entire portfolio.
yes, technically. And there's another thing. It is allowed as long as you have less than, is it 10 investors, 15 investors? Let's say it's 5 guys. And it's like, you have the money, I have the knowledge, I'm going to put it at the time, and you guys have the network. The 5 of us, we're going to get together. Well, it's just 5 people putting the business together. And it could be constructed as a fund, but then again, it's not. So if out of the 5 people, 4 have money, 1 doesn't, but the one that doesn't is in control of the fund, because it's a small venture, then that doesn't fall into the accredited investor rules. So you do not require to file with the SEC to make sure everybody's an accredited investor.
The SEC.
Securities and Exchange Commission.
Pablo, are you a accredited investor?
Yes.
No, seriously, when we were calling folks, because we were, you gave us a task, so I was calling between there.
Yeah. We were trying to find what other funds and real estate people have out there, and we were trying to compare. I was offering 20% returns and 30% returns expected, and then we started looking out there, and we saw that on the market, people are offering 7s and 8s, and at the top it's 12. And then there's some dude that maybe 18. And then it was like, holy damn, like we're giving great returns. So that's why I gave you the task to try to call these people and say, well, if we had money to invest, what could we do? Yes.
The reason I had asked the question of why it popped up on my radar wasn't just because when you scroll through it, like you must be an accredited. It clearly says like you must be an accredited investor. And so I'm on the phone, I'm like, am I accredited? Am I not accredited? I don't know.
Yeah, as a company and as an individual,
right. So,
I am. Yes.
Right. But there was one person who, when he answered, he's like, well, you must be an accredited investor. He didn't. Again, I'm new, so I'm not able to have the language of someone who is confident in this area. I am confident in many other areas, but I don't.
You'll get there.
Have that yet because I know that I don't know. He's like, well, you need to be an accredited investor, so like you're gonna have to like prove that or something along the lines of that. And I was like, okay.
So this is so interesting because
it's like,
no, so
why are you talking to me like that? Because he was the only one out of I called 12.
Right.
He was the only one that answered like that.
You don't need to prove it until after an actual deployment is made, and technically the law only requires that you ask the right questions. I fill a questionnaire, I give it to you, and then you can take that as truth. Why? Because the real way to prove it is you look into my bank account or into my taxes, and then you say, oh shit, yeah, this guy's a accredited investor. But those are private.
Right.
And if I am truly an accredited investor, that means I have a lot of money. Do I want to be spreading that information around? No. You act like Donald Trump and you say, over my dead body, nobody will know ever what the hell am I doing because I'm a private individual. And that, by the way, you mentioned Donald Trump, but anybody that has money, they do not want to share their bank statements, like, because of the possibility of getting hacked, theft, or just attacked in any way. So you do not want to share that information. Super private.
It also hurts your bargaining power with how much money you're going to invest and the returns that you're going to get.
100%. So the question is like, hey, send me your questionnaire and I'll answer.
Okay.
Like, under fault of not saying the truth, I'll answer your questionnaire and that's enough. But unless you're buying a property, and even then, let's say I'm buying a property, the property's worth $1 million. Mm-hmm. Send me proof of funds. That is the only other time where I think, okay, I need to make sure that you have those funds. You do not send that proof of funds to the seller. You send them to whoever is going to be your closing attorney or your escrow attorney. He looks at them and then he says, I assure you, Mr. Seller, I saw those documents and I can bet my legal license that I saw them. I don't know if they're true because that's not my job, right, but I saw them.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the way it works. So if you are asked, the answer is, I don't like giving out my personal information, but if you send me a questionnaire, I can answer it. And if you choose not to do business with me and you don't want to send me the information, it is not a problem. I will go to the next person. Thank you very much. It's very simple. Like,
I didn't like him.
You didn't like him?
I didn't like him. I didn't like the tone. Like, nobody else was like, well, I'll only talk to you if you have X. I'm like, all right, well, now you just sound really, really snobby, and I don't like snobby people.
I understand, but you have to understand there is a market for people like that.
Yes.
So some people is like, ooh, this guy's super snobby.
Yeah.
That is good. It means that he's made it in yeah. So for some people, it is a marker of success. I'm just talking about anthropology. That's how we react.
I know.
Sometimes.
I follow.
It's like a girl falling like for a guy that is an ass, and because he appears to have a lot of money and he appears to be very successful, is like, oh, it's so lovely. This guy's an ass because he's so successful. It's like, no, he's just an ass. But many times that snobbishness gets confused with success. He is so successful that he's very careful with his time. He's very no, he's just a snob. But to some people it is a marker of success.
It's also the idea of being exclusive.
Correct. And some people like that exclusivity.
Sure. It's a country club.
Right. Yeah. I will pass your bar, but I want to make sure no other people do. So it works 30. For some people.
30. We're at 30.
We're at 30? I think we should continue a little longer.
Okay.
How about we try to wrap it in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Because I don't even know what we were supposed to talk about in this episode.
No, we were trying to continue my questions. That's all that matters. That is all that matters. This is your podcast, but my questions now.
She's running the show.
Yes.
Oh my God. Lord.
Right? Like these ones you're gonna, So you were talking about calling. All right, and someone asked you a question. You said, I am an accredited investor. Send me your questionnaire. So, but in general, do you have any tips or tricks for talking to people, especially when you're cold calling people, you don't have a relationship to them, about the land that you're interested in?
That's very interesting. That's a great question. And to put some background, we have to call and contact people that own large acreage of land. If you listen to this podcast and own an acreage of land that you think we could develop, you should definitely give us a call. Of course, that saves us the trouble. Or email, right. Look at the email in the podcast.
Yeah.
Now, the difference and the reason why we are successful doing what we do, the biggest difference, if your name appears anywhere on the tax records, you will be called by people in India, by people in Russia. Oh, you have land, please, like, whatever. Oh, Mr. Sir, like, I am calling from Russia. Did you selling land? And then these people don't know what's going on. The reason why we're different is because we are relatable. During our introduction, we say, hey, I know you have this many acres. I know you've had this land for X many years. I'm interested in buying it. Would you like an honest offer? And
you stole that from Evan.
Evan says honest offer, and I like it.
You have to give credit.
Yes.
You have to give credit. So relatability.
Yeah,
I
because
think that's actually an excellent answer. Instead of being, you don't want to be cold or calculated or anything like that. And I couldn't try if I wanted.
You have to understand that there is an actual person, like, because we have to do 20 calls a day or 30 or 70, it doesn't matter how much. You forget there's a person on the other end, and you are trying to connect. And it's saying, I saw your piece of land. I am really interested. I know you get calls all day, every day. But this is it. We are not real estate agents, not brokers. We're really trying to buy your land. And we're trying to give you the most amount of money. But would you be interested in selling? And that's the thing. That's what you do. So that's the best advice I can give.
That's a really good answer. I like that. I don't know if you can tell this in a conversation, but what are green flags and red flags during a conversation with someone, be it about land or something that perks your interest, or you know that you can definitely work with this person, or you're like, oh, this is definitely, for example, the other guy that you guys were talking, you're like, ooh, you're like red flag, and you're like 2 red flags, not him.
So that guy was he's trying to sell us a service of being a land planner. But he was more interested in talking than listening. So that is a red flag, because we are his client and he wasn't listening to our concerns. Red flags, when I'm buying a piece of land, we had that. We were trying to put this property under contract along with Noah, Bill E. Mays. And don't ask me how I knew, but I've been doing this since I was 12. It was like, Noah, it feels like we're not negotiating with the same person. Something's going on. Like, they're behaving erratically. This is not a normal negotiation. I should be careful. And then I said, I need to know how many people, until the seller, how many people are doing, I bought the contract, I sell the contract, bought the contract, sell the contract, bought the contract, sell the contract. How many people are filtering this information? And if I don't know, tell them you're out. And he was so like, oh my God, I don't want to be out. It was like, no, you have to make your stance. Turns out there were 3 people in the middle. There was a real estate agent, and then wholesaler 1, and then wholesaler 2. Wholesaler 2 said, you know what? As long as you give me a piece, I get out of the deal. We get wholesaler 1, and he's like, same boat. And then the real estate agent, they didn't want to take us straight to the seller, but you could tell the real estate agent had an agenda in mind. Specifically, they were asking, I want the escrow money to be hard immediately.
Which essentially means that there's no refund. There's nothing.
You are going to analyze that property to see if it works. You're going to put $5,000, $10,000 on the contract. And then you are supposed to plan and check it out and do whatever you can. And then at some point, decide if you're going to move forward from this property. And they wanted whatever amount we put in to be able to use it immediately. That is a super big red flag. It's like, why? What are you hiding?
Right.
That you're in the business of
stealing escrow.
Stealing my escrow. Which, by the way, this also proves that they're newbies. Let me explain. Not only it's a red flag, they cannot use the escrow until we terminate the contract and move forward. It just becomes hard, but it doesn't mean it goes to their wallet.
Right.
Did you know that?
That makes a perfect sense, because otherwise why would you have an escrow?
Right. So
it defeats the purpose of having an
escrow. I have an escrow, and yes, it goes hard. You can't touch it until I back out of the contract. I still need to sign that I agree. Otherwise, it goes into contention, and then it stays retained by the escrow agent.
Forever.
For an indefinite amount of time.
Yeah.
And if you get another offer from someone else, I could ask for my escrow back, because then there was no foul. So the fact that they don't know this means they're very much in newbie territory as real estate agents, and that's why I was getting these mixed signals on this land. They were negotiating for things that were irrational for a normal day-to-day real estate transaction. Could I name them all? No, but I can just talk about that one.
No,
like,
so I'm looking. I'm like, what are things? I'm like, what are green flags? And you mentioned it very clearly. Like, you're like, on a phone call, be relatable, connect with someone. You are trying to treat. I mean, you should treat anyone with dignity and respect, but like, really, if you can connect with someone, this goes far. They're a
person that gets a lot of calls, and that they're like annoyed, senseless, because they're getting calls all the time. You want to get to, yes, I am here to really buy from you.
I'm going to wrap this up. Talking and listening needs to be a balance. If you're having a conversation and you know that you're the client, they need to be listening more.
Yeah.
Someone that talks more, probably red flag. If they're a newbie thing. If you want
to. A quick green flag is any type of interest, any type of, hey, there's a possible need, and then you just follow up and you pursue that need.
100. And we're pursuing a property in the south of Atlanta, 100 acres. It may be a green flag. It was a green flag, the fact that this particular client hesitated. Well, I don't know. I've been thinking about it, but maybe in 2 years.
Right.
Keeps the door open.
And that alone, we kept following up, and we may get it under contract next week. So the fact that it was like, and even sometimes even if it's a no, because as all the greats have said before me, the no is just the first path to a yes.
Yeah.
Because now you can start going through objections. In this case, she didn't say no. She just said in 2 years. So that was good enough.
Very good.
Yeah.
All right. That concludes.
That's good for this podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pablo, for having us on your world famous podcast.
Lol.
Pablo's